Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I am Basharat Salim, the Executive Director at the Islamic Society of North America. I would like to welcome you all to ISNA's Friday Reflections. Today, the guest for our program is Brother Muhammad Jalaluddin. He is serving as the Vice President of ISNA on his second term. So I will briefly introduce him and inshallah then give it to him for his talk today. Brother Muhammad Jalaluddin is a life member of ISNA and has served ISNA, MSA, and AMSE since 1972 in various capacities, including as a member of their boards. Brother Jalaluddin has a Master of Science degree from the University of Texas at Dallas and over 30 years of experience in Islamic finance and senior business management. He is the founding member and currently the president of Ansar Financial Group in Toronto, Canada, as well as the president of Ansar Financial and Development Corporation, which is a public company, first of its kind in North America, based in Toronto. It offers Sharia-compliant, interest-free investments. This public company has a Sharia board and is listed on the Canadian Stock Exchange. Brother Jalaluddin is also the vice chairman of Islamic and Ansar Housing Cooperative Corporations in Toronto. He is a founding member in establishing the first TAKAFUL, Islamic insurance in North America as a joint project with the Cooperators General Insurance Company of Canada since 2007 that is currently offering home and auto TAKAFUL insurance policies. Brother Jalaluddin has made many presentations on Islamic finance in Canada, US, and other countries. So please welcome Brother Muhammad Jalaluddin. Go ahead, please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'een. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Sirata allazina an'amta alayhim. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brothers and sisters. Jazakallah, Brother Basharat, for your very kind introduction. I would like to say a couple of words about ISNA, and then we'll move on to our topic. ISNA is your organization. It is my organization and the organization of the North American Muslims. It has been serving the Muslim community for over 57 years in various areas of Muslim life. ISNA is a not-for-profit organization and operates on donations. At the outset, I would like to humbly request each and every one of you to donate as much as you can by going to the ISNA website, isna.net. And by example, I will make my own additional donation today at the end of my talk, inshallah. Now, today's Friday reflection talk is slightly different from what we have been hearing during the last several Fridays. And I would like to address a topic, and that is the topic of muamalat. As we all know, muamalat is a very important aspect in a Muslim life. The subject of muamalat is very wide and generally includes areas that are outside of ibadah. I will focus on a subtopic of this muamalat, and that is called Islamic finance. And within Islamic finance, I have chosen two topics to share with you, my dear brothers and sisters, that are of great interest to our North American Muslim communities, and they are interest-free cooperative housing ownership and TAKAFUL, which is Islamic insurance. I will share our experience, which has been successful, alhamdulillah, in both these areas in Canada, and that our home ownership model has been adopted worldwide, including the US. Please consider this talk as educational and as a resource to establish similar projects in your own communities with required tweaking to fit the prevailing regulations within your communities. The Muslim community in general is still in the process of relearning Islamic finance after a long pause of several decades. My intention today is to inspire the Muslim community to learn more about practical Islamic finance and practice to our best abilities while earning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessings. I will share a number of slides during my presentation, and my first slide lists 6 general principles of Islamic finance. So I will go ahead and start sharing the slide. My first slide, as I mentioned, there are 6 general principles of Islamic finance. The first one is prohibition of riba or interest. The second principle is prohibition of gharar or uncertainty. Third is exclusion of financial transactions in any prohibited activity. Risk sharing, not risk transfer. Number 5, materiality in a financial transaction. And finally, justice in a financial transaction. I'll go through each one of them briefly a little bit later, but I think it's important to know just a few minutes to the history of Islamic finance and to reflect what has happened over the centuries. During the 400 years from the 6th century to the 10th century, due to rapid spread of Islam in 3 continents, Asia, Europe, and Africa, both Muslims and non-Muslims practiced Islamic finance for centuries, until the mid-19th century, confirmed by historical records of Mudareba and Musharaka contracts registered between businessmen. Due to colonization, Western capitalist financial systems emerged and continued till the middle of the 20th century. However, Islamic methods of finance were still often practiced between individual Muslims during the mid-19th to the 20th century. This is an important part. We never left our practices of Islamic finance, even though the Western capitalist system, the banking system, started emerging and became very strong. The independence of Arabic and other countries from the colonial powers by the second half of the 20th century, Muslim economists started reconsidering the application of Islamic finance and banking in the 1950s that continues with rapid expansion to today. Going back to those 6 general principles, they are fairly clear-cut, but especially the prohibition of riba has many reasons. The foremost is that it is not allowed, it is haram, indicated in our holy book in the Quran. But I think there is another reason that is also easily understood, is that the borrower actually pays the loan, that is interest, and also bear the losses from the use of these funds. So there is basically a double charging, that is paying for the funds that he has borrowed or she has borrowed, as well as for the use of these funds. Similarly, the item number 2, general principle of Islamic finance, the prohibition of gharar, uncertainty, and a good example of that is it could be gambling, insurance, and whatnot. The third principle is that the exclusion of financing and dealing in sinful and socially as well as environmentally irresponsible activities such as gambling, again, alcohol, and drugs. So the exclusion of financing and dealing in sinful and socially irresponsible activities. That's the third principle. The fourth one is risk sharing. This is very important. In any transaction, the risk must be shared by both the parties. It cannot be risk transfer, and that is happening in so many other jurisdictions. The provider of financial funds and the entrepreneur must share the business risk in return for shares of profits and losses. Fifth one is also a very key general principle and is very important. It is called materiality, meaning a financial transaction needs to have a material finality. That is a direct or indirect link to a real economic transaction. I would like to bring to your attention that the 2008 financial crisis that we had we followed only this one principle, that would have been averted. As we all know that many mortgages, they were toxic mortgages, they were sold over and over again without a real economic transaction, without ownership, and multiple times they had been sold. The last one, which is also a very important principle of Islamic finance, is justice. There should be justice in a financial transaction, and it should not that should not lead to exploitation of any party to the transaction. I believe I introduced this topic of Islamic finance by giving a little bit of history of Islamic finance. Maybe we can just quickly walk through those few slides that I have been sharing. I mentioned that there are really 6 general principles of Islamic finance, and they are self-explanatory. The very first one is prohibition of riba. Second one is prohibition of gharar, uncertainty, exclusion of financial transaction in any prohibited activity, such as pork and gambling, different industries that are excluded. Risk sharing, we must share any kind of financial transaction. The risk should be shared, it should not be transferred. And materiality, that means there should be a real economic transaction rather than just passing on contracts. And I mentioned that basically materiality is a very important part of a financial transaction. And I mentioned that in 2008, we had the financial crisis. Had we only followed one single principle of materiality, we would have averted the credit crisis of 2008, because unfortunately their toxic mortgages were sold over and over again a number of times without ownership. And finally, I think I mentioned that the justice in a financial transaction is key, and therefore one has to be fair between the parties who are dealing. Then basically I expanded on these 6 items. Let's move on to the actual topic, which is interest-free home ownership and Islamic alternative and the practical model that I'd like to discuss with all of you. Islamic Cooperative Housing Corporation is the first Islamic financial institution in North America providing interest-free homes to communities in Canada. The Sharia model adopted by the cooperative has 4 important features. Its musharaka or partnership model was adopted, specifically termed decreasing partnership, for its simplicity and practical nature for the long-term transactions. A partnership between a family and the cooperative, which is the community itself. The Islamic Cooperative Housing Corporation, which was established and set up in 1980, continues on for the last 40 years. The cooperative is being currently managed by a board of 5 volunteers who are elected every 2 years. There are different types of membership in the cooperative: prospective homebuyers under the interest-based mortgages, people who already have a home under interest with the banks. They are welcome to come back and join the cooperative. There are investors, simple investors, there are homebuyers and co-op scheme. Institutional investors, like for example, different masajid, Islamic institutions, they are all our cooperative's members. And also we have for juniors, like children, we have membership for them as well. How does a cooperative work? It basically, a member joins the cooperative by paying $75 membership fee, buys 6 shares of $100 annually, invests and buys further shares. And if he's ready to buy a home, we have a certain percent 20% for the 100,000, 25% of the next 100, and 30% of the third 100,000. Now, as you know, the market has gone way high in both US and Canada, particularly in Toronto. So we do consider higher investment from the cooperative side for people who live in the Toronto and the Vancouver areas. The members, basically, when they buy a home, they pay proportionate rent. We call it occupancy charges. They increase their ownership every month or every second month. The rent decreases as ownership ratio increases, and then the gain, the share gain and loss of the co-op within the cooperative. Legal ownership remains in the name of the housing co-op till 100% ownership shares are purchased by the member. Home buyer's investment is secured by signing an occupancy agreement, which is connected to the title under the terms. Here is a simple example of how the rent revision form or the occupancy form looks like. The member initially puts 120,000, by another 20,000 on closing. Housing cooperative puts in 166,000, and the cost of the housing unit is 306,000. Occupancy charges or rent is determined as 2,000, and then the monthly proportionate is a very simple formula: 166,000, which is the housing's investment, times the 2,000 rent that we have agreed upon together, and then you divide by the 306. So you end up with a red-lined figure of total proportionate rent of $1,099. It is also important to know that this is a partnership. Housing is a partnership, therefore we have to share both gain and loss. As a result of sale or transfer of the housing unit, any gain or loss realized will be divided as follows. If at the time the member has more than 50% shares, 10% to the cooperative and 90% to the member, because it is really the housing co-op is designed to benefit the member. And B, if the member has 50% or less shares within this house, 20% to the co-op and 80% to the member. The capital gain or loss will be shared after making an adjustment for authorized improvements, expansion, and certain legal expenses incurred by the member. So again, keeping the partnership in mind, any capital gain or loss will be shared after making the adjustment, meaning if you make any improvements in your home, that is also taken into account. These are some figures that I will go rapidly. Our growth in membership is, I will summarize at the end. Actually, we are almost 5,000 now. This is the distribution of membership of Islamic Housing Cooperative membership. We have about almost 3,500 in Canada. There are about 114 members all over the US. As in California and the northeastern states, we have 14. This is the distribution of membership. And then we have globally, we have members all over the world. We have from USA 114, there is Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and many countries, China and Germany. And the housing units, we have combined about 800 here. You can see how they have grown from 1982 onwards. And similarly, the capital also has grown to about 35 million. And similarly, the income or the rent that we have been collecting has gone up to $1.3 million in this year. According to the cooperative rules, the dividends, 80% must be given to the members and 20% for expenses. But generally, because the board is voluntary, we hardly even spend 12 or 13%. So really, almost 88% dividends are given to the beneficial members. And we have been declaring dividends from 1988 onwards. They range from 4% or $4 per $100 to $10. What has happened is that in 2003, which is almost 23 years later, the share capital of Islamic Housing Cooperative was exhausted. So we had to register a new cooperative, which was called Ansar Cooperative Housing Corporation in 2003, with the same principles as of Islamic housing. So I would like to now combine the two. In 40 years, purchased over 1,000 homes, sold over 65 million worth of shares, and we gave dividends 4 to 10%, as I mentioned before, and the membership has grown to 4,500. It's important to note that our model, our Islamic cooperative housing model, has been adopted worldwide. It is being taught in Malaysian universities. As you know, Malaysia is a leader in Islamic finance, and it is often we are invited to share our model and experience both locally and internationally. It is regarded as a reference resource and a source and quoted in media and in research articles. So I would like to spend a few minutes on the second topic that I mentioned is the TAKAFUL. TAKAFUL is Islamic insurance. But just a couple of words on Islamic Housing Cooperative. This is a doable project. It can be done in any community in the US. Brothers and sisters can get together and form their own cooperative. Important to note that in Europe, especially France, almost 60% of their economy is based on cooperatives. Here in Canada and Quebec, 40% of the economy is based on cooperatives. Even in the US, I believe it's about 25 to 30% of economy is based on cooperatives. TAKAFUL, Islamic insurance. What has happened is that we discussed TAKAFUL with a large insurance company in Canada. And we had a number of discussions with them for about 2 years, explaining what our needs are, what does the TAKAFUL need, and for them to understand that there are two major principles of TAKAFUL. Number one, that first of all, it is defined as guaranteeing each other. Islamic insurance is guaranteeing each other a shared guarantee or a shared responsibility, a cooperative concept of mutual assistance and mutuality. Basically, you are helping each other in times of need. Like Islamic insurance, TAKAFUL or Islamic insurance is generally even less understood in the Muslim community, and some may self-conclude as not allowed. But that is not the case. There is a difference between conventional insurance and TAKAFUL. Conventional insurance involves the trading of risk. Very important to note. It's a trading of risk in the process of which pure risk on the part of the policyholder becomes speculative risk on the part of the insurer. There are elements of uncertainty, error in the transaction. Insurance companies invest in bonds and other fixed returns, carries interest, and may hold equities of companies involved in prohibited activities. So we were actually introduced to this insurance company, cooperative general insurance company, by an international body, International Cooperative and Mutual Insurance Federation. The head of that organization was Kathy Barneswick, and we had 2 years of discussion with them. The cooperators' motive was and the intention was to develop a new market and at the same time help a fellow member establish his own TAKAFUL in the long run. Over 2 years of rigorous work and several meetings to understand each other's positions, Sharia requirements of TAKAFUL, and conducting demographic and risk reviews. The cooperators offered only property TAKAFUL to housing members in 2007. So these are the two main conditions required for a successful TAKAFUL. The Cooperative Insurance Company of Canada, which is the second largest insurance company in Canada, we agreed that all premiums and surplus funds are invested separately in a Sharia-compliant investments and maintained in a separate book of business. So the funds must be invested in Sharia-compliant investment and not any fixed income. And the second criteria was, after meeting expenses and claims, surplus profit is shared by the policyholders as participation rewards. We also noticed that in this pilot project, we had low claims. People were responsible because this was a group plan following TAKAFUL principles. 100% of policy retention rate. So people who took policies, they basically came back to the same insurance company, and the loss ratio was low. There are some challenges of TAKAFUL here in Canada, and maybe anywhere else where we try to set up a TAKAFUL program. There is lack of Canadian fixed income investment products. In other words, 70% of the funds in an insurance company must be put in fixed income, and that was a big challenge for us. But 30% they are allowed in equities, and we were able to convince cooperators to put our funds in those 30% equity. There is a lack of Sharia compliant investment opportunities everywhere. There's a lack of basically competent local share scholars. And then I think we need, more important, is extensive TAKAFUL education seminars are required. There's a large Muslim population in Canada, over 1.2 million, another ethically minded customers. So the opportunities for TAKAFUL are still there. Islamic finance is better understood and practiced well in Canada compared relatively to the US. Potential bigger Muslim population next door is US can be mobilized. Great potential for overseas TAKAFUL operators. For TAKAFUL and Islamic finance future to succeed in the West, in our countries, it must be able to demonstrate its special qualities to the consumer and that it is as good as a conventional finance. TAKAFUL and Islamic insurance is not limited to Muslims. It is another product line which avoids stealing in interest, emphasis on the sharing of risk, transparency, and investing only in ethical, socially, and environmentally responsible investments that promotes a healthy lifestyle and sustainable development. The role of Sharia in TAKAFUL is that of an overall reviewer and monitors Sharia adherence, an additional layer of scrutiny. So it is nothing scary about it. It's actually making it more safe and secure to operate this TAKAFUL program. The resurgence of Islamic finance after a brief period of absence requires extraordinary efforts by all stakeholders not to deviate from its principles and demonstrate once again its proven viability globally. Basically, I'd like to summarize the efforts we made in Canada. Our efforts are really in Islamic finance to implement a holistic Islamic finance in Canada, and we like the same principles, the same efforts to be made in other countries as well. We pioneered our first Islamic housing cooperative, as I mentioned to you, in North America in 1980. It was followed by interest-free Islamic investment opportunities for Muslims like RRSP or IRA in US, and we launched the TAKAFUL. And finally, we also set up a public corporation in North America on the Canadian Stock Exchange. It's called Ansar Financial and Development Corporation, AFD. We did not rest yet. We want to continue to do more for Islamic finance in Canada, and we hope that other countries will do the same. Our next plans are to set up an Islamic credit union, and we are working towards it because this will be an easier way and easier entry into the financial market when compared to banks, because the regulatory regulations for banks are very powerful and very strong. This is our website and whatnot. If anybody wants to get more information. And Jazakallah for listening to this talk. I apologize for missing out the first few minutes. They were also important because they really discussed the history of Islamic finance and some motivation and inspiration. I will just go back here, stop sharing the slide. So Jazakallah again, brothers and sisters. I would let us pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ask for his blessings for all of us, to be safe, to be healthy, and to accept all our ibadah and to accept all our muamalat efforts. And may Allah guide us all. May Allah keep us safe and keep us on the right track, inshallah. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا إننا آمنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وقنا عذاب النار. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاك الله everyone.
Jazakallahu khairan. Thank you so much, Brother Muhammad Jalaluddin, for your presentation today. Sorry to our audience, we had a couple of technical glitches, but that's, I guess, the norm these days. Thank you all for joining. Inshallah, we hope you will stay connected with ISNA as we continue our virtual programming in this current environment. Please visit our website for the upcoming programs. We have several events that we are planning for the fall for the next few months, inshallah. So please check out our website, get our newsletters, and we will see you next week here, Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Stay safe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.